I'm Paul Hoffschmidt, founder and CEO of Alpha Sophia, and this week I'm joined by Thomas Cunningham, Director of Business Development at Physician Growth Partners. Thanks for joining us today, Tom.
Glad to be here, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. So to start right in, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what led you to your current position at Physician Growth Partners.
Yeah, happy to. So, Tom Cunningham, I'm based in Chicago. Currently lead business development for Physician Growth Partners. We are a healthcare investment bank that serves as an M&A advisor to physicians as they explore strategic partnerships, private equity or otherwise. Prior to PGP, led biz dev for a research firm called Levin Associates. And then prior to that, for a decade plus, was in medical device, which kind of ties into data, access, outcomes, everything that I know you're all tracking at Alpha Sophia. So happy to dive deeper, but yeah, thanks again for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Maybe to pick that up, to describe that to a layperson, my understanding is you at PGP, you basically support individual physicians, individual practices or practice groups when they aim to be acquired, for example, to join a larger group of practices to get further capital for further growth. Are those the main use cases you support them on, or are there other ones I'm missing?
Yeah, I think, Paul, what we're seeing, right, in healthcare broadly, right, is consolidation is kind of the word we see out there, right? Whether it's a press release or LinkedIn or otherwise, the voice of folks who are thought leaders, and whether they're independent physicians on one side or retail health or payers on the other side, right? There's sort of this tug of war on where is healthcare going, right? And so for us, we're helping physicians navigate that, right? Because independent physicians are not struggling, but they're dealing with more and more headwinds, right? Quarter over quarter, year over year, that is making it harder to practice tomorrow than it is today. And so we're there to help them kind of navigate and explore options as things kind of march ahead.
Yeah, understood. What would you say are the key drivers for those headwinds for individual practices and physicians staying alone in that healthcare ecosystem at the moment?
One is just a true divergence of reimbursements continuing to go down 20 plus years for many physicians, while inflation and the cost of running a practice continues to go up, right? And so any graph you'll see from the American Medical Association showing that it's just, that's number one, right? It's just the cost of doing any business. If you're a business owner in anything, whether you're running a factory or running a medical practice, if your costs continue to skyrocket and you make similar or less money, that's going to be a challenge, right? Number two is just continued competition, right? So the same independent group that's 5, 10, 20 physicians in suburban, rural metropolitan areas continues to deal with not just their friends or collegial competitors across the street. It's retail health. It's payviders, right? The insurance companies who are buying up doctors, which we'll go into that here in a bit. But so I think just the landscape is continuing to shift, and they are doctors are so focused and laser focused on seeing patients, running their practice that we're helping them zoom out and say, hold on, take a pause. What's happening? What has happened in the past 2, 3, 5 years? Is maintaining the status quo, doing what you're doing today, good enough, or are there other avenues that we should help you explore?
Yeah, and I mean, it's an old problem that physicians face, that they have those two very different types of activities. On the one hand side, taking care of patients, and then if they're independent, also running a business with all the administrative tasks and regulatory tasks and so on involved with that. So of course, I mean, one big lever, as you mentioned, is teaming up and then benefiting from shared services for admin, for reimbursement, and so on, and then having a synergy effect, which has a positive effect on overall profitability of the group. But when physician groups come to you and you work with them and you help them maybe team up with others, get acquired, get financing, and so on, what are common challenges you see physicians having who maybe don't work with you but try to do something like that independently? So what do you usually help them with to overcome those challenges?
Yeah, I think to put a framework around it, right? A process of a physician group, whether it's dermatology, orthopedics, cardiology, whatever. So we cover, I think, around 17 medical specialties. And so the process, though, of navigating this and exploring this comes down to 3 phases, right? Phase 1 is education. So they learn about the market, they learn about us, our experience, our expertise, who are the players out there that they could partner with. The second phase is exploration. So they hire us once they feel like this is worth exploring, right? They explore kind of the buyer universe, if you will, the potential partners out there. And then 3 is execution. And that, to your point, to your question of what are those challenges on, is there going to be remorse on a deal? And so a lot of our job in helping the physicians explore the market and potential partners, like finding the right marriage, right? Ultimately it's a marriage. If a physician group decides to go down this route, the potential red flags are the partner doesn't have really a track record of success in healthcare, because healthcare is unlike any other industry, right? B, it's the capital and the resources, the talent recruiting, talent acquisition. So there are things that we do from a, call it, reverse diligence perspective. So we help the physicians do reverse diligence on the potential parties that they would be kind of partnering up with. And so just helping them do that is super critical to help the physicians feel comfortable and confident in moving forward. Lastly, I think the number one thing actually going into any of this that physicians are worried about, right, is can they maintain clinical autonomy, right? Can they practice how they are tomorrow, if and when they decide on doing a deal? Can they practice tomorrow how they practice today, and is any of that going to be disrupted? So our number one role, outside of helping them negotiate the economics and make sure the partnership, there's a fit, right, track record of success, et cetera, making sure that the way patients are treated does not change.
Are there also cases where you team up with a physician or practice some time before a potential acquisition, and you actually also support them on the way to get in shape for a good deal later on, to pull a few levers to get the practice in shape? Or do you only support on that acquisition bit of the journey?
Yeah, good question. So we're not a consulting firm, right? So we are definitely in the healthcare investment banking realm, so very transaction oriented. However, a lot of groups will come to us early on, and we can provide some benchmarks and some kind of achievable metrics that they can target, and then ultimately, if it's not right today, then 6, 12, 18 months down the road, at that point they then could consider this.
And that's super helpful to at least have be able to have market benchmarks about the KPIs which lead to certain outcomes later on in transaction, and the ranges which are acceptable and not acceptable. Having that, I can imagine, as a physician or practice, is super helpful on the journey to actually get there.
Yeah, and I think to your point of probably 30 to 40% of our conversations are week over week are groups early on in that, again, education phase of like, what is this, what could it mean, and all that. So and some move quick and say that this is where we need to do this, and others it's let's revisit down the road.
Yeah. When you mentioned the 3 different steps involved with supporting a practice in that in that M&A process. You mentioned number one, getting market understanding, and I can imagine there's a lot of data involved in that. Maybe you can share a little bit how you're using data in that process, which types of KPIs are interesting to you when evaluating a specific market, and what your process around that is.
Yeah, so there's plenty of data sources out there that track mergers and acquisitions, right? They track kind of valuation multiples, what practices are worth, et cetera. And then at PGP, we have our own internal, data. We are, the most active advisor in the space with over 65 physician transactions in the past 6 years. So we have data around each specialty, right, and sort of what those metrics are. So combination of, platforms out there that provide data, and then our own internal data that's helping inform kind of what things might be worth.
Yeah, and when you look at data, do you also look at the geography around the practice and who those competitors are, who the other practices are in that area, whether there's already an overexposure in a certain therapeutic field in that area or not, or are those things you're looking at?
Absolutely, yeah. So healthcare is very local, and then even though a dermatology group in California could be worth X, a dermatology group of similar size in Clemson, South Carolina could be worth Y, and there's that's going to be dependent on different variables such as, is it already oversaturated with private equity backed dermatology platforms, right? Is it kind of a newer space where there's not a lot of aggregation yet? And I guess I mentioned consolidation at the outset. Our view is we're helping physicians aggregate skill and scale, right? Not consolidate. So consolidation is somewhat necessary in healthcare because there's so many different players, and it's scale helps improve efficiencies, right, and improves hopefully cost structures, et cetera. But yes, the short answer is markets are different. The multiple or the value that a practice could get in New York City may be similar to a practice in Dallas, or maybe there might be some differences there based on geography, payer mix, and all these plenty of other variables that go into that discussion.
Yeah. Maybe touching a little bit on your previous experience in the medical device MedTech industry, and how physicians are of course working with medical device sales reps, with pharma sales reps. In your conversations with physicians and groups, what's your perception on that relationship with MedTech and pharma, and salespeople from MedTech and pharma of those physicians? Is it something that's often in discussion? What are the thoughts you're hearing from the medical community about that?
In terms of like strategic partnerships or more?
Yeah, in terms of strategic partnerships, in terms of how to work with the medtech and life science industry, how that can help practices to maybe grow faster by adopting new technologies earlier on, and so on. Is it something where you see that some practices perform better because maybe they've teamed up with a medical device company that has launched a new device early on, and then we're able to acquire new patient cohorts faster than competing practices who have not adopted that new technology? Are those things where you see some practices are performing better because they're more prone to innovation compared to others, or the other way around? Is this a driver in some or is it something you're seeing that this is a good proxy for the success of practices or not?
Yeah, I think it is. Probably more data could be studied, I guess, but overall, I mean, the more the practices that have, that continue to kind of seek out innovation, tend to outperform, those that are kind of stuck in their ways, if you will. Healthcare is moving fast; it's changing, right? And so maybe not the robot as much. I mean, the robot obviously has transcended procedures, and it's remarkable. And this is not a downplay on robotics. I think there's a huge play there from all of the major medtech companies, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. because every company, right, every large MedTech company has a robot at this point, and it'll be interesting to see who proves out the data that it's actually saving time, money, and efficiencies. But the folks who are, like opening their own surgery centers in a CON friendly states, et cetera, it can aid them in terms of competitive advantages. But typically, those are the ones who are coming to us and saying, "Hey, we're doing A, B, and C already. Is this worth exploring?" And does private equity and strategic partners, how much do they value these things we're building? Whether it's surgery center, whether it's adding other procedures, adding additional nurse practitioners, physician assistants, et cetera.
Simple question. Can you afford to have a rep in every county, or do you need to be hyper-targeted in your outreach? Do you need to know information about your targets going in to be successful, or do you have years and years before you want to close that deal? If you want to be focused, if you want to deliver fast, you should visit alphasophia.com and help your sales team out.
Maybe going back to your core activities at PGP, when you start discussions with a practice, is it usually driven by a practice reaching out to your team and getting into the conversation that way? Or are you also actively reaching out to practices where they fit into certain search criteria of maybe acquirers or investors you're working with, or maybe it's both? What are the dynamics there?
Yeah, great question, Paul. So it's a combination. I think part of our brand and our credibility in the space over 6 years helps us receive inbound inquiries. So we get a number of those on a weekly basis of independent groups across all of medicine that are interested in just understanding what this is, what it could mean, et cetera. And then we have a market research team who's to your point, uses data to say, what groups are competing, what groups are in the top 10 or 20th percentile of their specialty, that are independent, who, might be worth talking to and educating on exploring their options. So yeah, it's a combination of, call it inbound and outbound, I guess, from a sales speak perspective, right?
Understood. Maybe touching base on, we talked in the beginning, or you talked about the healthcare market where you see an overall pressure to consolidate in the US healthcare market. Maybe looking at that a little bit more, are there other trends in MedTech, HealthTech, digital health, in how practices are being managed, which you are seeing or which you see to evolve in the next couple of years? Is there something looking into the future, what you see, things that are probably going to happen, drivers for market shifts and so on?
Yeah, I think I do. The short answer is there's going to be slow but fast changes. So slow meaning it's healthcare, right? Like nothing moves fast. Whether it's a value analysis committee, analyzing the price on a new product that we're trying to bring to market and help a doctor, or a technology that's going to help a doctor see patients faster, things move slow. What I mean by it's going to move fast, I think, in the next 5 years, because we have, call it, AI, not just a buzzword, but there's things out there being developed that are trying to help physicians enable and augment their care instead of replace them, right? So that's a good thing. I think so that's the tech side. I think from the consolidation or aggregation perspective, only 3.3% of physician revenue in the U.S. that's produced is, call it, backed by private equity, and that's from a recent PitchBook report. Probably I think about 4 or 5 months ago they came out with their kind of Q2 report, and so that begs the question of what are things going to look like in the future? We have Zimmer Biomet has now Arnold Schwarzenegger as their chief movement officer, right? Like there's things that are just out of left field that we probably will see more of that. I think MedTech, right, with the capital, the resources, the innovation that they already have built into their infrastructure, is going to get more acquisitive of the startups and the companies who are actually impacting preventative care, wellness, aesthetics, all these other things that are not just helping people or doctors treat sick care, right? Because that's always going to be there, and that's not going anywhere, right? We need great physicians, great care. If and when you get sick, that's great. But I think we're going to see a lot more, not consolidation, but a lot more kind of integration between medical, call it MedTech, HealthTech, with actual kind of retailization of health and how people take care of themselves. I think that would be, but I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it's going to be slow still because it's healthcare, but a lot of fast changes, in terms of how patients access and receive care.
Yeah. Do you also think that there's going to be further new business models evolve? Like, for example, I don't know, practice groups where you can go and just get a full body scan and a diagnosis to check whether you might have any chronic diseases and so on, or more things like subscription-based services where you pay a base fee and get access to a certain level of care, and so on. Do you think that further business models like this will evolve, or is it something which is always going to be a thin subgroup of in the market?
Yeah, good question. I think it's a two-part answer. One being that, like Forward Health just announced they folded, right? And they tried to kind of perhaps replace doctors. It was a great effort, I think. It was a lofty goal of bringing more access and kiosks to malls and things. I got tons of text messages, right, in my phone that I had to stop sending. But it was a valiant effort, but I think the failure there is it was very aspirational, but the reality of healthcare is it's still a high-touch, high-tech, high-touch first industry, right? And it's we're humans, and we appreciate that component. The second part of the answer is, I think, we are seeing new models, however, at the same time, driven from the bottom up, like primary care, direct primary care, DPC is kind of a growing thing, right? And different models that are creating a nucleus of health and then building around that referral networks of a cardiologist and an orthopedics, right? For a vascular issue or an MSK issue, then you can build around that. So, specialty medicine's not going anywhere, and with the expected shortage of physicians in the next 10 to 20 years, that we if anything, we do need some new models, but ones that still value the physician-patient interaction and relationship and trust, because ultimately that's what healthcare is built on, right?
I agree. Maybe one last closing question. So what's up next, or what's going to be your main focus at PGP in the next couple of months? Or are there any strategic initiatives coming up you want to share?
Yeah, I think for us, 2025 is, so I guess to put some context to it, 2021 and 2022 were kind of record-breaking years for healthcare mergers and acquisitions, right? Kind of induced by COVID, induced by challenges that doctors, faced. 23 was very much a softening, and 24 was sort of, we'll call it neutral year. Plenty of activity, but a lot of wait and see with the election, right? The election here in the U.S. Now kind of behind us. Still with uncertainty there. So I'd say for us, though, 2025, we see a very robust year of mergers and acquisitions across both specialty medicine and kind of the wellness space. In fact, I'll just leave it with, probably a quarter or a third of our inbound request for exploration of growth, scale, how do I continue to compete, build new models, is in the wellness, whether that's women's health, men's health, aesthetics, movement, musculoskeletal, right? So, interesting. But for us, next year is helping physicians navigate this and continue to try to help them shift the control perhaps more in their favor, because obviously it's been going the other direction for 20 plus years.
thank you for that outlook, and thanks for joining us today, Tom. It was a great pleasure, and I wish you the best of luck with PGP next year.
Sounds great, Paul. Thanks for having me. Happy holidays.
Like it or not, you're in a fight for physician attention. And in this fight, you'll want to leverage best-in-class targeting data, 360-degree profiles of every target, omni-channel outreach, and so much more. Great MedTech sales teams don't want to work without Alpha Sophia anymore. Visit us at alphasophia.com and learn more.